Hello and welcome to the Video Creator Show, where we talk the juicy details of how to succeed on YouTube. And what better way to do that than to talk directly to somebody who has done it. Cassidy Tuttle is the creator of Succulents and Sunshine. Her channel has amassed over 111,000 subscribers and over 7 million total channel views. Her channel is where you can learn how to grow gorgeous succulents no matter where you live. But first, the Video Creator Show is brought to you by VidChops.com, an editing service that helps take the burden of editing off your back. Check out VidChops.com to see how you can save yourself tons of time and energy while taking your YouTube channel to the next level. And now that is all done, Cassidy, how you doing today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Right on. So your channel is very interesting to me. You're teaching people how to grow succulents specifically. Can you take us through, give us the TLDR of your kind of journey into succulents? Why succulents? Why are you drawn to this type of plant? What is it about them that gets you going?
Yeah, so I first started growing succulents it's been a little over 10 years ago, and I had seen them popping up in magazines. I thought they looked really cool. And my background is actually in product photography or food photography. So they're very photogenic plants, a lot of color, interesting textures. And at one very gray, rainy day in the middle of January or February, my mom and I went up to a nursery and they happened to specialize in succulents. And so that was where I was like, I'm going to buy some succulents. Let's see what these are all about. And I really knew nothing about them at the time. They just looked cool. So since then, just even within a couple months of getting them, I started to realize they're fairly low maintenance. I could keep them alive. I hadn't really tried a lot of other plants before, and these seem to work pretty well for me. I've since learned they're probably the best plants for me because I'm what I call a passive aggressive waterer. I sometimes will remember to water my plants when they're supposed to, and then a lot of times I'll just ignore them. And succulents can tolerate that for the most part. So I love that they can stay looking healthy with minimal effort on my part. And that's really what kind of got me hooked, was just learning more about them, how to keep them alive, and realizing, oh, these are plants that I can really do something with, and it doesn't take a ton of effort on my part.
Which sounds ideal. I've tried to grow my fair share of plants. The first one I tried to grow actually was a succulent. I watered it to death. It was a little tragic, but I did my best, and I was in college. So anyway, it's I'm glad you found some plants that really work for you. I feel like one day I will get into gardening. Succulents seem like a good start, though I suppose it depends where you live. Do you live somewhere very sunny?
I currently do. When I first started, I actually lived in Utah. So we had full 4 seasons, and I was just growing them on a windowsill. Now I'm in the Phoenix area of Arizona, and everyone thinks it's an ideal climate for succulents. And it definitely has some advantages over living in Utah, but it's too hot for most succulents outside. So I still tend to be mostly an indoor grower, although I do have a group of outdoor succulents that I'm working with, trying to figure out what really does work in this climate.
So speaking of what works, your top video, how and when to water succulents in pots, etc., has over 1 million views. Was this kind of the video that took your channel to the next level? Was it kind of a gradual growth? Can you take us through when your channel really started to gain serious momentum?
Yeah, so it's definitely one of the videos that really took off. And I knew it would. Watering, even like you mentioned, you watered a succulent to death. That's really common. So I wanted it to be one of the earlier videos on the channel, but I also wanted to make sure I knew what I was doing so I could do a decent job at it. I had posted, I've probably had the channel for, 7 or 8 years that it's been in existence, but it really wasn't till around 2018 when I started actively posting content, paying attention to what I was posting and being intentional with it. So I basically took the content that was working really well on my website, the blog post that people were coming to, and turned those into videos. So I really had a good idea coming into this, what was going to resonate well. And I still try to do, my due diligence of looking for search terms and seeing what other content was out there to get an idea of what to post. But the watering video was one, I would say it was probably, fourth or fifth of the higher quality videos that I recorded when I really decided I was going to get into YouTube. And as you mentioned, it's been one of the top performers ever since then.
Mm-hmm. And so you have multiple different camera angles. It seemed like most of it is just kind of looking at you. Were you kind of like, did you set up multiple cameras and then just cut between them? Did you like take B-roll? What was your kind of workflow there?
A little bit of both. So we did have 2 cameras set up. I did all the video myself. I guess for the most part, I've done all the video myself. And every once in a while, I'd have my husband come in and like hit record or help me line things up just to make sure I'm centered and focused and all that. But I had one camera straight on and then one kind of off to the side. And I would record as much as possible just in one sitting, start to finish, re-recording pieces as I messed up over or fumbled over words. And then I was working with a video editor. And so he had a lot of great suggestions on how to record the B-roll and make it simple for him to process, but also simple for me to record. So I was pretty official and in how I was recording, like I had a shot list, things I knew I wanted B-roll of, and then I would use sticky notes as like slate cards. So before I recorded or, before I did the real shot, I'd put the sticky note in front that says, pouring water onto the succulent. And that way the editor would know where that clip was supposed to fit in. And it was a lot of work, but it was so nice to just have everything all in one place. I could easily see what I needed, what was missing, and just have a really good process for it. And yeah, so it was really, I felt like it was pretty simple. It was work, but it was pretty simple to get the B-roll and match it up with the primary videos that I recorded.
Mm-hmm. Which is awesome, because I think one thing that trips a lot of people up is they film a video, but they don't do it very efficiently, and they end up like eating a lot of time and energy. So I freelance and help other people build their YouTube channels as well. I have a client who they should have filmed like you filmed, where you just kind of do one long take and then cut it up and then have a bit of B-roll, and in your case, like sticky notes to really make it clear what the B-roll's about. They did like 1,000 takes of like everything, and then it was just kind of all over the place. A lot of people do this. Don't do that. If you can, just get one long take and then cut it down. I feel like this is part of your success, that you are able to create videos in a way that actually makes sense and is efficient. This is incredibly important. A lot of people, they're thinking more along the lines of like, oh, what's the big idea? Like, how do I think of something that people are really going to want to do? But I feel like half the battle is doing whatever it is that you want to do in a way that is efficient and that actually makes sense. The workflow is smooth and doesn't drive you crazy. It doesn't drive your editor crazy. That's awesome. I'm very happy for you.
Thanks. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting as you say that, because there's so much that goes into producing a video. I mean, yes, technically you could just record a quick video on your phone and upload it to YouTube, and some of those work. But the thing that was interesting for me is there were a lot of processes or things that I saw, feels cliche, but like throughout my life, there's all these experiences that kind of got me to that point. Even things like my brother was a video, I don't know what his job was. He was on student council in high school, and he did all of these videos for all the sports teams. And I remember him saying he wouldn't like stop and take a bunch of different cuts. He would just keep recording because he was going to go back and edit anyway. But that way he would have a whole, event, or at least a big chunk of video to work from, instead of like 15 different clips and trying to find the right one. He would go back and tag the video where important things were happening. And then even before I started, I'd asked my video editor for input, like, how do I make this easier for you? And he had worked for a TV station, so they had incredible standard operating procedures, or SOPs, and folder structures. So I knew from my experience with blogging and working with other people that it was helpful to have a system in place. So I didn't obsess over it, but it was definitely intentional, where I knew that in order for this to not be overwhelming for me and for me to keep going with it, I needed to have that system in place. So I spent a little bit of time figuring it out, then recorded some videos, and we've made tweaks, to the process since then. But going into it, having an idea of what I wanted and how that flow should look, definitely made being consistent with YouTube a lot easier. So much easier.
Yeah, for real. And it just the amount of energy you save, I feel like that's almost the best part, is not wanting to rip your hair out when you're making a video. Anyway, I think we've driven home the importance of optimized workflow. And for real though, would recommend. So looking at your channel when I was watching things over, you have a lot of YouTube shorts. YouTube shorts, of course, are very similar to TikToks, and people some YouTubers I've talked to, they're a little controversial in the sense like they don't know if they're worth making. Some people think they kind of clutter your channel when you look at the videos page. What has been your experience with shorts, and would you recommend other people do them?
I feel like doing YouTube shorts was a really good experiment. That's how we went into creating them. Part of it for me was I hit a point where there were other aspects of my business that I wanted to focus on more than creating new content. But creating a 1-minute video, and on my channel, mine are very organic. It's kind of like I'm showing up and just telling you what I'm seeing in my succulent garden for the day. So there was not a lot of like planning. It's all taken in one shot, which is easier to do where it's 1 minute. And the goal really being just to deliver quick tips. So like I said, I went into it as an experiment, and initially I felt like it was a really great experiment. And then it kind of switched to where it wasn't worthwhile. So when we first started posting, I think I was posting one every 2 to 3 days. And I noticed that I was getting ad revenue on those videos, which I wasn't expecting. But, I started making anywhere from $50 to $100 per video, depending on the level of engagement. And I thought, if I can take a minute and record a video, have a few minutes of post-processing, because we did put captions directly on the video, like embedded on them. That seemed like it was worth my time. I don't know what changed, but after about 2 to 3 months of doing that, suddenly we weren't making ad revenue on those videos anymore. And then at that point, the engagement wasn't really beneficial to the channel. So like you described, a lot of people felt like they clutter up the channel. I was kind of in that boat. I felt like it didn't really it did add to the channel in the sense that we were reaching people in a different way. But from the analytics that we've looked at, people tend to kind of binge watch our videos, or, they're watching those longer videos all the way through. And with shorts, I just felt like we weren't getting the same audience, but it was kind of compensated for initially by the ad revenue. But once that ad revenue stopped, I really didn't see a lot of value coming from the shorts. We weren't getting more subscribers, maybe 1 or 2 per video. We weren't getting comments. We weren't getting engagement. And I was surprised at how many of those shorts only had like a 10-second view versus watching the full minute. So I feel like it was a little bit of both for me, where it worked out. It was really good in the beginning, and then the benefits tapered off. And we ended up deciding it wasn't worth continuing to do them, even though it was, a very small amount of effort compared to a typical video. It just wasn't producing the results that we were getting from longer form video.
Sure. Why do you think it fell off like that, ad revenue wise, engagement wise? I have some guesses on YouTube's end. Like, I know YouTube has really been promoting shorts. They've been wanting to compete with TikTok. So it is possible that they really bumped up the ad revenue, at least for a while, to get people interested in doing shorts. I don't think they ever made an announcement saying they would do that. But do you feel like, I don't know, maybe your shorts content changed in some way that your audience found less interesting, or was it the same and it was more on YouTube's end? Like, what do you think happened there?
I really dove into it because it was literally overnight. Like, we posted a video on Tuesday and it made money through ads. We posted a video on Thursday and there was I think I made like a penny, in ad revenue. I will say the engagement with the videos, the number of views, the number of comments, number of subscribers, that all stayed really consistent. So the only thing that was, I guess, keeping me in the shorts game was the fact that we were making some ad revenue from it. And we had new content to email out to our email list, the subscribers were seeing. From the ad revenue side, I really tried to figure out what was wrong, because I wondered, like you said, is it something that is different with these videos? Am I uploading them a different way? Did I put content in them accidentally that I didn't know was problematic? And I really could not find an answer. And I spent a decent amount of time researching it. So I have two different theories. One is that I really shouldn't have been making ad revenue from them in the first place, and somehow Google realized it and, stopped the ad revenue. Or that it was part of if it was part of an experiment that YouTube was doing, where they were kind of distributing some of those shorts creator funds as ad revenue instead of, as a bonus view. Because I never got to that point where I got accepted into the shorts creator program, at least so far as I'm aware. Or just that they, like I said, they were running a short-term test. Let's see what happens if we run ads on shorts and, pay that out to creators. But it is a really big question mark for me that I tried finding places to email in or, post on the forum to see if I could get some input or feedback, but never really heard anything.
It's hard to hear from YouTube. Even I had a couple contacts within YouTube. I haven't for a while, but kind of in the stages of building my channel Treesicle, we had some people within YouTube that we could talk to, and even they would often say, "Oh, we don't know. YouTube is the algorithms are artificial intelligence based, and we're not necessarily able to understand why they do what they do." Like, all right. So YouTube is very mysterious. They're kind of a faceless monolith. But we do what we have to on this platform, huh?
Yep. Yeah, and the thing that's interesting is nothing changed in terms of monetization or engagement from long form content. And so ultimately that's what we decided we would go back to. I have not been consistent with posting to the channel lately. We've done a couple live videos, Q&As during a promotion that we were running on the website. But other than that, everything seems to be the same. So the shorts, like I said, just ended up being an experiment. And I don't have I would say, unless someone really wants to experiment and try things out, or it's a type of video content that works really well with your topic or your channel, it's really kind of up to you whether or not it's worth doing. And I would imagine it varies from channel to channel. So you don't know until you try. But I would say most of the people that I've talked to are in a similar boat where it's it's a little bit, but it really doesn't produce that much overall.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. So since your channel has started growing, how has YouTube changed your life? What does the before and after look like? Do you feel like you have a lot more flexibility in your life now? You're a little more financially comfortable? What are the ways that YouTube has helped you out in your life? I always like to ask because, obviously this podcast is about building a channel. Some people are in the very early stages. Perhaps they're wondering, what does it actually look like to be a YouTuber with some success? So yeah, can you fill us in?
Yeah, so I do consider myself a YouTuber, but it's kind of my secondary role, I guess. So the way that my business has operated primarily is through our website or through our blog. And that had been running for probably 5, maybe 6 years before I really committed to doing YouTube. So fortunately for me, YouTube was a low risk endeavor where if it worked, great. If it didn't, I'm not out a bunch of time and money and effort So the blog was essentially funding my ability to do YouTube. But some of the reasons why I went into it were to help increase our search rankings on the website. I've always had a big focus on search engine optimization. And several years ago, that became a really big deal to have videos embedded in your blog posts. And I didn't want to embed other people's videos. I wanted to embed my own. So that's really where the YouTube channel kind of came in. I also love diversifying my income sources. So 5 or 6 years ago, before we started the YouTube channel, the blog was still my family's full-time income. It has been for 7 or 8 years now. And YouTube for me was an opportunity to gain a different income source and also a different traffic source. So I love diversification. I love not relying on any one income source or traffic source to provide for my family. It just makes things a little bit less stressful. So in that sense, I do feel like having the YouTube channel has kind of alleviated some stress, knowing, okay, we're going to have ad revenue coming in from these YouTube videos. We also sell digital products on our website, and we promote those in the YouTube channel, like the YouTube videos, as well as the descriptions of the videos. And it's not mind-blowing numbers. I'm sure we can optimize and improve that, but it's consistent enough that it's absolutely worth putting time and effort into maintaining traction within the YouTube channel. And then the other thing that's a little bit intangible with it is having those videos embedded within our blog posts has helped increase our search rankings. And I feel like there's a really symbiotic relationship between YouTube and Google search, where having these videos embedded on our blog posts that are really high traffic drives more views to the YouTube video. And so that helps the YouTube algorithm then show those videos to more people, because YouTube is seeing that it's getting a bunch of views externally. So there's got to be some good content there. It kind of is a really nice relationship between the two, where the blog drives more people to the YouTube channel, the YouTube channel drives more people to the blog. And they both, as far as I can tell, they both kind of help each other rank better overall in searches. So it's added a revenue stream that is really consistent and reliable. And part of that is because we spent 2 years really producing high quality content that has ranked for a long time. Like the watering video, we have another one that highlights different kinds of succulents. And one of our other popular videos is about succulents that get stretched out. A lot of our audience grows succulents indoors, and without a grow light, most succulents will begin to stretch out. And so that's a really common pain point as well.
Like they're reaching towards the light.
Yeah. And then instead of the leaves being really close together and compact, they'll be stretched out or they'll lean over and they'll start to lose color.
Oh, dang. Yeah. I always get kind of sad when I see a plant like growing really long and then it like tips over under its own weight. It's always like, oh, you tried so hard, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is definitely a big part of what we help people with. So I feel like in general, having an online business has absolutely been life-changing. My husband was actually in grad school when I started Succulents and Sunshine. And when he was done with that, we just made this decision. We're like, well, we're already making almost a full-time income from this. We have a lot more lifestyle choices. We can choose where we live. We can work when we want, where we want. And so the combination of the blog and the YouTube channel has made it so we have a lot of flexibility in what we do on a regular basis. Even like a really important example, I guess, to me is we were able to take 2 weeks off to go to a family reunion. And I do have a full-time assistant, so she kind of manages the day-to-day, but I didn't have to work while I was out of town. And then I came home and had COVID. And so I was out for almost 2 weeks with that. Awesome. My business kept going. The YouTube income keeps coming in. The blog income keeps coming in because I did that work initially. And now it's just a matter of kind of doing the maintenance to keep things at a level they are, or putting effort into different projects to really help things grow and expand. And I can choose. I can choose to maintain. I can choose to grow. And I love having that flexibility and that option to do whatever feels good to me in the moment.
Beautiful. So I'd like to talk to you more about the blog now. I feel like growing a blog is really difficult. At least from what I can tell, it seems like it would be harder than growing a YouTube channel, but I could be wrong. Like how did you go about starting it and then getting attention to it? Were you just like posting? What is the strategy there? I mean, clearly you were posting, but
yeah. So I usually tell people it was a happy accident turned very intentional business. So I had a blog that I was using. So back in like 2011, 2012, when blogging was just like sharing what you're doing every day, I wanted to get more photography clients. And so I was posting on this photography blog. But when I bought my first succulents, I was posting pretty regularly about what I was doing with the succulents and taking cool pictures of them. And I learned about making money online and search engine optimization. So I put analytics on the site and realized no one was coming to my photography stuff, but I was getting search traffic already to these succulent posts. And that was when it turned into, that was the accident. But then the intentional business was we bought the domain Succulents and Sunshine. We moved the succulent articles over. I reworked them so that they were actually informative instead of just kind of a casual, oh, hey, they look cool today. Here's what they look like. And really dove into search engine optimization. And it's interesting. I had someone make a comment to me. They're like, if you were to start over, you'd probably do things differently, right? Like it's a whole different ballgame. And I really don't feel like that's the case. Like, yes, I would do things differently, but blogging and search engine optimization and getting traffic through Google search is still a totally viable business opportunity. So we're actually in the process right now. My husband is building out another niche site, and we're basically following the same structure that we utilize with Succulents and Sunshine, where we're looking for questions that people have about the topic. We're looking what phrases they're using to ask those questions. We're looking at relevant topics, trying to find things that have a high enough search volume on Google, but not so high that it's going to be like really high competition. So for example, getting into this, I wasn't targeting succulents as a search term. Like that would have been cool. And we did end up ranking #1 for succulents about 2 or 3 years into starting the blog.
Dang.
Yeah. So that was a pretty big accomplishment on my end, of a moment of like, okay, this is working. We know what we're doing. But we were targeting things like how to propagate succulents from leaves, or, how to plant succulents, how to water succulents, what soil to use for succulents. So kind of these more long tail keywords, and just writing really good content. A big part of it that I know helped us succeed early on and has helped us maintain the brand is just having really high quality photography. So it's really interesting. I feel like building a blog and building a YouTube channel, I feel like at their core are very similar. It's just a different method. It's a different media, but the concepts behind them are fairly similar, where, you're looking to get certain types of engagement. You're trying to target certain keywords. And generally speaking, I recommend people start in something fairly niche. It doesn't have to be super, super small, but, just saying, I'm going to teach people how to be healthy is not really a great niche, finding something that's a little more specific. But yeah, ultimately it comes down to producing high quality content, answering people's questions, and doing it in a way that they enjoy. And, kind of checking the little boxes with the Google or the YouTube algorithm. But we've always been really reader or viewer focused, and making sure we're doing things not just because someone says it's the way to go, but that it's actually serving our audience. And actually tying that in a tiny bit, even with shorts, we ran into that where our audience, not on the channel specifically, but on our email list, had commented, they're like, these are fun, but we like your longer videos better. We like the more in-depth. So I think blogging is still a very, very viable business opportunity, similar to YouTube. So for me, in terms of like, which should you start with? Should you do both or one or the other? I think it comes down to how you feel comfortable creating content. I know like getting a camera or being on camera or finding a way to record video that's not you talking, a lot of that can be a big hurdle for people, whereas
Definitely.
they might feel totally fine just writing basically an essay, researching and writing the answers to questions. So I think they both work. And like I said, they can work well together also.
Yeah, for sure. I pardon me. I'm much less familiar with the world of blogs. I think like YouTube, I'm on YouTube all the time. I guess it works well for my job. So blogs are a little more mysterious to me, but okay. It sounds like it's totally possible to still grow a blog in this day and age as much as a YouTube channel. So that's kind of my main takeaway right now, which is fascinating and amazing. Because I feel like that opens things up too. As you said, like not everybody's going to be willing to get in front of a camera or a microphone. If you're more of a writer, then maybe blogs are the way to go. Find something that's interesting to you and you can post about it. And as you said, the high quality photography, I agree. I think that also helps. I mean, looking at your website, Succulents and Sunshine, the pictures on here are beautiful. Like I feel like it really does add a lot when you have these really crisp, clear pictures. I think it adds a level of professionalism. Like your background in photography is really suiting you here. It's helping you here, and I think that's great.
Yeah, thank you. Well, and something just kind of a little success story to kind of put in people's ear. I think a lot of times people with looking at starting a YouTube channel or looking at starting a blog, a lot of times they'll see people like myself or yourself or others who've been doing it for a long time and assume that it's going to take a really long time, or like there's some magical thing about, these successful people that they don't have. But I'm actually working with a client right now. She started her blog at the beginning of 2020. And I would say her topic is fairly general. It's a lot more general than I would have recommended someone start with. But within 2 years, she went from having nothing to, I think she's written a couple hundred articles, and she's making 4 or 5 figures a month just in ad revenue on her blog in 2 years. So
oh my God.
If you're willing to put the work in, that's a big part of it. Is it does take time to rank in search, but I think people get into their minds like, oh, it's going to take super, super long time, or just that it's not even possible to do anymore. But she's one of my favorite success stories because it was something that she just wanted to try out. And so she was really intentional with the work she did, but making, 6 figures a year in a period of 2 years is mind-blowingly impressive to me. Just putting that work in. But to me, it also shows blogging is not dead. There are still people who love to read more than they love to watch video. And so there's really a place for both. Even the difference between my husband and myself is validation of this for me, where he watches videos all the time. And if I want to learn something, I am usually reading an article. I want to be able to skim and jump around, whereas he will, go into YouTube and search for how to do a certain thing. So that's the great thing about the world is there's a lot of different platforms for people to get the information they want in the way that they want to get it.
Yeah, that is beautiful. I'm definitely more like your husband. I always am down to watch a how-to video if I'm trying to do something. I guess it's just like different ways people's brains work. Something about the video and the visual of somebody presenting, oh, this is how you do it. Let me shift the camera around so you can see it a little better. I don't know. That's very comforting to me, but I also totally get it. Somebody I used to work with would, like, whenever he was trying to learn something, he could never ever watch a video for it. It would like drive him crazy. I don't know why exactly, but he was an article man through and through. So I get it, totally get it. Okay, so you're at this point where you're making good money on your blog and your YouTube channel. You have this new business venture that you're using 3D printers for, and like you and your husband are starting a new business here. It seems like you're in a really good place. Now that you're here, you're kind of, we'll say, sitting on the mountaintop, perhaps. Do you have any advice to somebody who is just starting out? And, maybe they have a video or two or a blog post or two. What do you tell somebody who is there and they're feeling a little down? they're not sure if this is worth it, what do you tell them?
One of the first things that popped to mind when you asked me that is, it doesn't change when you get bigger or when you get to that so-called mountaintop, right? Like
So true.
There's always something that's going to be challenging. There's always something that's going to be discouraging. And I kind of see myself as like a Pollyanna. I usually have a very positive outlook on things, but there are plenty of times when I've been frustrated, discouraged, ready to throw in the towel. So I feel like those are all really normal feelings. But for me, the thing that makes the difference, the thing that takes someone from that point to being successful is continuing to move forward, continuing to test and try things. And I feel like there's a lot of balance with building a business where it's really beneficial to listen to experts, see what they're doing, test out what they're saying to do, and find out what works. And then on the flip side of that, doing what feels good to you and doing what works with your energy and your physical capabilities, really. I see a lot more talk these days about people like burning out or feeling overwhelmed by doing all of the things. And one of my kind of core principles is I'm creating this to have a life that I enjoy. And so if I get into this mode of, okay, well, I have to do this and I have to do this and I have to do this, and I don't actually want to do any of those things, I usually try and step back and say, okay, do I really have to do this? Or is there a different route that I can go? So I would say finding the balance between pushing yourself to keep going, because that really is important, being consistent and pushing through challenges, because there's always going to be hard things that you're working through. But at the same time, being aware of, if you push through on this thing, are you going to just be done and hit burnout and not ever want to come back to it? Or are you going to push through it and that's going to give you the success that you want to see? And I think a big part of that pressure a lot of times comes from feeling like we have to do it someone's way, the way that we're being told. And while I've definitely followed experts and I've gotten a lot of advice from people who know what they're doing, I always come back to, I need to do this in a way that works for me. So take what I'm learning, but implement it in a way that feels good to me and that is something that I'm excited about and I feel good about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well put. I think when people are starting a YouTube channel or a blog or whatever it is, some kind of creative venture, they bring to it a similar attitude they have about their normal job, which I know sounds counterintuitive, and maybe some people would be like, well, no, I definitely don't do that. This is my bleeding heart art project. But I think, like, we've been so programmed, like growing up in school, work a job after you graduate. There's this feeling of obligation that is associated with work. And sometimes creative ventures can feel like the counterculture to that. It can help you get away from that. But I think ultimately you still have to show up every day, or at least often enough, to make this venture happen. And we start to kind of like lean on that feeling of obligation. So what you said about like connecting with yourself and actually like, is this what I actually want to do? Is this how I actually want to do it? Or am I just trying to follow the advice of other people? Just to add on to that, that is exactly what you should be doing. You should be trusting your intuition. And if something feels wrong or like a lot of work and you're constantly having to push through, maybe the way you're doing your creative venture isn't right for you. Maybe there's some tweaks you can make. Maybe you need to optimize your workflow. Maybe you need to change a little bit. Like, I don't know, maybe somebody's got a knitting channel, but they should actually have a crochet channel. They're just more interested in that. And I think this space is it's blurry. The lines are blurry. It's not rigid. So feel free to do what you want. Like, that's the freedom. But also show up enough to actually make it happen. So yeah, that's my addition to what you said.
Right. Yeah, I do feel like a lot of times people give up right before it's going to work out, or I guess part of it too is feeling like if they put effort into one particular thing, they've got to follow through with that thing. I've really shifted gears a lot of different times. And Yeah, it's just interesting. You really don't know what's going to happen, but for me, that's part of the fun. Like one of the things that I love about this business is if I come up with a new idea, I can probably implement it tomorrow or the next day. You know, there's so much flexibility, but there's also this pressure to like, oh, I started this thing, I've got to keep doing this thing. But even like the example you gave, like if they start a knitting channel and maybe crocheting is more their thing, it's okay to leave your knitting channel and start a crochet channel, but just take what you learned with you and start from there. Even things like, I don't know, like you mentioned, we were starting this 3D printed product business. And for years, I swore I would never sell a physical product. I didn't want to do shipping. I didn't want to do inventory management and all of these things. But we came up with this idea that I loved. It was so fun. And I was so excited to try and get it out in the world. And to say it's all sunshine and rainbows is not true. But at the same time, I currently view it as my side hustle. You know, like we have Succulents and Sunshine, and then we have this Snappy Pots as our side business. And I've paid a lot of attention to the feelings that come up with it, where there are times when I'm like, oh, I really need to get this thing out. Oh, we really need to do our social media for this. Or, oh, we need to make more YouTube videos about Snappy Pots. And whenever that happens, I always step back and say, you know what, this was just something fun to try. And I don't have to do any of those things. If I want to see results, I should probably pick some of those things and I should move forward with them. But if I'm really just in this to have fun, then I need to treat it that way. If I want to treat it as a business, then, you know, I need to make a plan so that it is moving forward and I'm reaching those goals. And for me, it's usually a combination of the two. Like we obviously want it to succeed. We want to have that consistency, but not at the expense of me hating this business and not wanting to be there. Another aspect is just hiring out different pieces of it. So fortunately, we're in a financial position where we can do that. Like we have someone who does most of the inventory management for Snappy Pots. And we have a designer that we use to create some of the pieces. But one of the things that has stayed in my plate and probably won't forever is the packing and shipping. I actually really like packing and shipping. It's really relaxing and kind of therapeutic for me. So I haven't had anyone else do that. I just take that on, you know, every night I'll just pack a couple orders and take them to the post office the next day. So there's a lot of experimenting. And I think looking at an online business as an experiment is really beneficial, where it's like, okay, that part didn't work out. What can our next experiment be? And just sticking it out long enough so that the experiment is valid before you jump ship or switch to something else.
Totally. I think one thing that can trip people up when they're trying to build things and keeping that mindset that you just described of like treating it like a business, but not so much that you're getting sick of it and that you hate it. I think people, they have expectations, right? They're expecting this YouTube channel or blog or whatever it is to save them in some way. Like this is going to be the shining light in their life. They're going to be famous. They're going to be financially independent. Whatever it is, when their expectations don't meet reality, it's kind of crushing. Another thing is if someone isn't financially stable, like I've had periods of my life where I felt like I was making very artistic, innovative things. I felt like I was expressing myself, but the whole time I kind of had this voice in the back of my head of, geez, I sure hope this financially succeeds. And it kind of got in the way of me expressing myself. Like I still made the videos, but I think there was a lot of resistance in making them because I wasn't financially where I wanted to be. So part of this, I think, too, is just kind of having your life set up in a way where you feel like you are comfortable and you're not really worried about finances that much. It's hard to totally get there where you're never worried again about money. But if you can get to a place where you're not like relying on your Hail Mary to work, then yeah. I think you're going to do much better and be able to see things more clearly and kind of pivot where it makes sense instead of just trying to try way too hard to make this thing work. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, yeah. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people will come into this like, okay, I need to like make money right away. And I am a fan of, monetizing from the get-go. No one knows to an extent how long you've been doing this or whether or not you've reached some imaginary threshold where you can finally start to monetize. But I feel like not having financial stress while you're working on this is a big deal. Or if you're in a position where you need it to work and you need it to make money, that's where I would then go look for experts who help with, paid advertising, ways where you can kind of control the volume or control the reach. Whereas a lot of the organic posting and a lot of social media stuff, it's a very slow build over time. You're not going to, most people who are just starting out and this is their first time, they're not going to be an overnight success and suddenly be making a couple $1,000s a month. It's going to take some time. So having some overlap between, a full-time 9-to-5 job that you're working and then putting your effort into this in the weekend. I think setting a realistic expectation is really important, because if you just post 5 times on social media or you've uploaded, 5 videos to your YouTube channel, you're not suddenly going to be a YouTuber and like full-time and making all this money. But looking for the paths to grow the business that align with your needs, both short-term and long-term. Like you might kind of grind for a couple months to like really get things kick-started so that you can coast or do some other things later. But I think listening to other people's stories of how they got started and kind of researching how long does this take will give a much better perspective and hopefully be less discouraging. There's always going to be discouraging things, but having that realistic expectation of, okay, I maybe shouldn't quit my full-time job yet, but if I did quit my full-time job, I have this amount of money to keep me going for X number of months, and just being smart with it. But I've always taken a really organic approach. And so that idea of like overlapping is really comfortable to me, where even when we first started, we had funding through the grad program that my husband was in. So all of our expenses were covered. And when I very first started, I was also doing client work for photography. And we reached a point where one of my clients wanted to bring me on full time, and I didn't want to be brought on full time. And so we talked about it. We're like, you know what? We've got our expenses covered for the next 4 to 5 months. I've made all of $100 with this blog, but maybe we can do this. And so I put all of my effort into building the blog. I quit the client work. I put all this effort into building the blog. And within 4 months, I'd already had enough foundation in place and then working full time in the blog, where I started making $1,000 to $2,000 a month within a couple of months. And it wasn't quite enough to cover all of our expenses. But again, we still had some other income. So it wasn't a complete financial stressor at that point. But I was very careful to not just like, okay, we're going to go full-time blogging and I have no way of monetizing, or I don't have any idea of what I'm doing. It was very careful and calculated when we made those changes.
Mm-hmm. So you've been very careful, but still taking risks this whole time. It seems like you have a good balanced mindset about all of this. Some people I talk to seem very impulsive, or I don't know, their expectations are just a little wonky or something. It seems like you've been taking calculated risk after calculated risk, and it's really working out for you. And props to you for that. Thank
you. Yeah, I know not everyone will have a partner that they can go through it with, but that is one of the great things I've noticed about my husband and I is I get really, really excited about things. I love ideas. I love new things. I love things being different. So I tend to be the one that's like, let's do this. Let's try this thing. And then he's like my voice of reason, like, well, what if we try this first? Like, let's take a, simpler approach. But I think even personally, like you said, like I'm trying to figure this out. I want to push myself, but still maintain some level of comfort. And there's potential I could have been a little more risky and maybe, seen some bigger reward. But like I said, I'm happy with how things have gone overall. And I feel like I've reached a level where I have options. I can do what I want to do, and I'm not super worried about whether or not it's going to pan out. So building that out and being intentional with it, finding a way where you can do what you want, but still have a level of certainty, for me at least, is very ideal.
Totally get it. I'm in the same boat. I try to operate under essentially the same principles. But Cassidy, we have pretty much hit the 50-minute mark here. So it's at the point of the interview where I asked, like, why don't you tell people where they can find you? I mean, Succulents and Sunshine, of course, but, feel free to pitch your Instagram, your Pinterest, be shameless, say whatever it is you want to say to the beautiful people.
Yeah. So there's kind of, I guess, 3 different places. Succulentsandsunshine.com is our main bread and butter income. That is like my baby, where, that's where you can reverse engineer all the things that we're doing and see what I'm working on. And then I also work with other bloggers. I haven't done YouTubers, but mostly bloggers, to help them improve their income, find ways to monetize and optimize their websites. So that's just at CassidyTuttle.com. And then, like I said, our newest venture, which is Snappy Pots, these 3D printed pots for succulents or indoor plants, which is snappypots.com.
Snappypots.com. I love the name, by the way. That is beautiful.
Thanks to my mom for that.
Awesome.
She's great at naming.
There you go. I hope she gets a very large percentage.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much for joining me today, Cassidy. I really value your perspective. Everything you said is great. I'm happy things are working out for you. You got financial freedom. You're taking these calculated risks. They're working out. Awesome. Love it. Love to hear it. And with that, whoever you are watching this, make sure to like, subscribe, follow whatever platform you're on so that you do not miss a single episode of the Video Creator Show. And let's not forget, the Video Creator Show is brought to you by VidChops.com. Take the burden of editing off your back. Why not? Check it out. And with that, I will see you later, Cassidy, and everybody else.